All right, here we go on the second part of the right price. So without sounding cheesy, the price is right. It's stuck in my head, the whole theme song. I hope it's not stuck in yours, but let's talk about the last couple topics related to the right price. So what we're talking about first is the total cost of ownership. And then we're going to talk about cost management. So diving in, we talk about total cost of ownership and managing pricing. We really are talking about all three of these objectives. Just like I mentioned before, if you don't align your practices with finding the best or right price for your business, when I say right, meaning it has to align with your organization strategy. If you don't have agreement on price and you don't have a way of containing those cost increases when your supplier comes to you and tries to increase the price, very rare they ever offer to decrease it, you're going to end up with continuity of supply issues, and you're going to be spending a lot of your time trying to fix pricing on stuff that shouldn't have been a problem in the first place. So we're still in chapter 6, and we're going to wrap it up here with a few short slides. So total cost of ownership is one of the concepts that is near and dear to my heart, because we have had this conversation so many times, not only at home, but I'm talking at work. So there's going to be a camp of people within your organization that think we should just compete on unit price. It's going to be your accountants. It's going to be your executive leadership. It's going to happen. They're looking at, well, this one, I can go online. I can Google it and it's $5. Well, how come we're paying $6? Okay, it's a fair question to ask. But you have to remind them, we're not just competing on price. We have to do our math too. We have to research why we're paying a little bit more and be able to justify it when those questions do get asked. It's not a matter of when they get if they get asked, it's when they get asked. Most organizations will evolve from that, what are we paying for it now, and I can find it online and get it cheaper mentality, to something called landed costing. Because they'll start to understand, oh yeah, you do have to pay for shipping. Oh yeah, you do. It's either baked into the price of the good or it's separate and you pay a shipping fee. So we know this as consumers, right? Amazon Prime is not free, even though you think you get it for free. You pay a certain fee every year, and if you don't make a certain number of shipments, it's not worth your money. But because you pay, it's paying your shipping upfront, essentially is what it's doing. They've added some other benefits, but you get the point. So landed costing looks at how much are we paying for the product and what is the transportation cost. Total cost of ownership takes it even further. It says not only is it the item that we're paying, the price that we're paying, the transportation cost, the cost of maintaining it, this product over its life, the opportunity, if we have this item, what can we do with it? If we don't have the item, it's opportunity lost cost, which is fun to, it's just the opposite of that. What happens in our supply chain? Risk, meaning if we source it from this supplier, is there a risk that they might not deliver? It could be a quality related risk as well. And then if the product has an end of life, what is the cost of disposal? So, there's that. You'll hear people start to talk about total cost of ownership when things get highly contested on value, usually. So when I talk about total cost of ownership, I'm talking about products that are not commodities. Okay? Don't spend your time doing total cost of ownership for toilet paper. It's not worth it. Now, total cost of ownership for a vehicle, now we're talking. Now we're talking a big investment. We need to think about things. Now, I'll use this example, and my husband probably won't like it, but I use it all the time. He really, really wanted a certain type of car. It was for his business. It was a Mercedes coupe of some, or a sedan of some sort. And I was telling him, like, yeah, it's a great price. He bought it used, only a couple years old. Transportation cost of getting it to us was no big deal. Maintenance cost, on the other hand, at first was fine. And then once the warranty expired, the maintenance cost was ridiculous in comparison to what we're used to. So, very expensive. But we need to understand that, right, going in. The opportunity, whether or not we're going to have a vehicle for business use was an opportunity for us, so we didn't have to put personal miles on it. So there was that factor we had to take into consideration, as well as the additional insurance that we had to take on, as well as the risks associated with having another vehicle on our property. And we didn't worry about disposal costs because we always figured we could sell it, but we needed to figure out what the resale value would be if should we get rid of it. So lo and behold, 2-3 years in, warranty's about to expire, and he's telling me the car is fine. We love the car. He liked it for work, and he says, I think it's time I get rid of it. I'm like, well, why are you thinking that? Here we just plunked down cash. We're not even done paying this silly thing off. Got about a year to go, and you're talking about getting rid of it. I'd like to not have a car payment. Well, the one thing he kept mentioning was maintenance costs. Well, when the warranty goes, even though there's nothing wrong with it, it's really going to cost us too much money to maintain. So in the end, we ended up getting rid of the car and moving on to something, looking at total cost of ownership. He finally listened. We had a convert when it comes to total cost of ownership. That's a long-winded example of how total cost of ownership applies in our personal life, but also in business. And what most businesses don't do is stop and calculate those total costs. When I was importing product from all over the globe, most of the time my management just asked me for landed cost. How much was it going to cost to get it here via transport, via ocean or air? They never factored in the cost of duties or cost of customs brokerage or anything like that, which tiptoes into the total cost of ownership, though it's technically a transportation cost. So, expanded cost. There's more to it. We talk about sourcing here in a couple weeks, and it will also be part of your term project. You're going to start thinking about total cost of ownership. So put a pin in this conversation, and if you need to remind yourself to look at this slide deck, please do. Next one is ethics. I mentioned at the tail end of last presentation, ethics in pricing is huge. Huge, huge, huge. And it can make or break your relationship with your supplier. It could also make and break your relationship with your company. Okay? This is what I mean by this. There are some best practices on how to handle pricing negotiations in a way that is ethical and keeps you from having issues with your supply base. It's just a good way to keep everyone's hands clean in the process. So the first bullet point here is target pricing versus price sharing. Target pricing is telling your supplier, hey, I'm looking for something around the price of $10. If you could do better, that's great. Now, $10 may or may not be what you are paying at this point, but it's a target. Or I'm looking for something plus or minus 15% of what you're currently offering me. That could be another way of giving target pricing. Versus price sharing. Price sharing is when you take your current supplier's pricing or a supplier that has also bid the product. They're not your supplier yet, but you've taken their quote and you share it with their competition. There is multiple things wrong with this. One, if you are sharing and it's known to the supplier who you're sharing with that you're sharing their competitors' information with them, they are now going to question your ethics as whether or not you will share their information with the competition. So that's what I mean by keeping your hands clean. Stay above and beyond reproach when it comes to pricing. Be very clear in your words when you, in writing and verbally, when you say, this is the price I'm looking for. Suppliers sometimes will be bold and they will ask you, well, is that what you're currently paying? And you say things like, it's possible, but I'm not comfortable sharing that with you right now. So they understand the importance that privacy is important to you and that you're trying to do things ethically. I've had suppliers try and push it with me. And be, oh, come on. I said, no, you wouldn't want me to do that to you, would you? Now, if the pricing is readily available online or in a trade catalog or on a line sheet, don't give it to them anyway. If they really want to look, they'll find it. Okay? Don't aid in that. Just stay out of it. Cost transparency is this concept where you build a relationship with your supplier. Usually this takes a long time. And you share information. They are willing to share their cost breakdown with you. Demanding cost transparency is something that could set the supplier off as far as beginning to wonder what you're up to. And why do you need that information? That's proprietary information. I had a purchasing agent whose job was cost control. And one of the things he started doing, because it made his job easier, was just telling all the suppliers, you tell me your cost breakdown, raw materials, labor, overhead, and so on. He got so many letters. Actually, his boss got so many letters saying, what are you trying to do? Well, he was trying to hit the easy button. What he did is created suspicion in the supply base. And what it did is it raised our prices because suppliers were then padding their overhead or their material costs because they knew he was going to come back and ask for a cost reduction. It doesn't help in the long run unless you have a trust relationship. Then you have this thing called collusion or antitrust. So in your text, they talk about antitrust laws, very important things. The government has imposed antitrust laws to prevent people from price fixing and so on. So antitrust laws are generally good things. I haven't found one I disagree with yet, but it prevents people from creating harmful competition. Collusion is this action of suppliers getting together and agreeing what they're going to quote. So they're fixing the market. That is also illegal. So understanding that you can't participate in that is really, really important. All right, enough on ethics. It's very important and very core to who we are. We do not want to be misconstrued as individuals that are corrupt in our purchasing practices. Now let's talk about cost management as we go out of that conversation. We want to keep our costs pretty much level. In fact, I have this activity, my husband and I have this activity that we try and do every year. Since we've been married, we say in one area of our bills or our expenditures a year, we try and cut down the cost instead of increase the cost. So maybe it was switching from cable to Netflix and Hulu. It cost us less a month. Maybe it was looking at a different kind of scheduling our meals technique so then we can reduce our grocery bill. We've done that as well. So this is what we're talking about in business. Trying to keep your costs neutral year over year is one way of maintaining your profit margins, but trying to reduce costs where you can year over year is how you increase your profit margins. Okay. So here's those 4 different types of products we talked about before. We have commonalities or commodities, critical products, special products, and generics. You have the number of suppliers at the bottom, low to high. You have value of the product, low to high. So we have low value, high number of suppliers. There's quite a few going on here. So we have critical products. We have a high, you may have a high number of suppliers that can do it. High value of the product is definitely there. I think we need to switch here, special and commodities. We get the grid. So we have generics. We have a high number of suppliers available, low value. So commodities, switch it with special products here. Sorry about that. Commodities, you have low value products, low number of suppliers. So there are very few that actually do it. Sometimes there'll be more, but very rarely. Either way, how do you deal with these guys? That's where I'm getting to. How do you manage costs in these different categories? So critical products, you're going to want to do things like cost analysis, collaborative cost reduction. That's why I use that Ford example where they came in and they did a cost analysis with on us and then challenged us for price reduction. One thing we used to do with our supply base is we would go in critical products and we would look for ways to eliminate cost, and then we would share that cost savings. So if we found a dollar's worth of cost savings per product, we went and cut it in half. They got 50 cents, we got 50 cents. So our price only went down by 50 cents, but it kept the company healthy. Generics, you look for automation where you can. If you can do things like have customized catalogs with Office Max so you can stop searching around for how many pins your company's going to have, it's an example of reducing cost and controlling cost. One of the things that we did at our company was we put in vending machines with a company called Fastenal. I know other companies have them, but this is just an example. We had a vending machine for common items that are used in our manufacturing process. Everything from gloves, nitrile gloves, to material handling gloves, certain kinds of tape, paint pens, things that were used on the production line. By putting in the vending machine and individuals have to use their badge to be able to access them, we actually saw our spend go down significantly because so people were then accountable for what they were spending. It also automated the process. Instead of having a clerk having to manage the stock room, we had vending machines that were allowed to manage the stock levels for us, and the supplier would refill them. So we automated and reduced the offerings. Commodities, you can do pricing and using leverage for pricing. You can use market pricing analysis to also find better price options. You can also, for commodities, sometimes go overseas for better options. Depends. Very much depends on what you're trying to buy. Special products, again, cost analysis, but if you can standardize it as much as possible, you're going to reduce the cost. So asking the questions, why does it have to be special? Why does it have to be made out of this material? Can we test alternatives? In fact, half of my career was working with engineers and trying to figure out alternatives to reduce costs for special products that they had designed. So, cost management strategies. The process of managing cost management strategies is you need to have a continual focus on it. Whether you be in the strategic end of the business of purchasing, that procurement end, and you start working on cost management as an activity, or you have a person dedicated to it. It could be someone that works in accounting, that works with purchasing. It can be structured in many different ways. Either way, the goal is to year over year improve your cost competitiveness. So that is the brief conversation on cost management strategies and the importance thereof. In this section, we covered total cost of ownership. If you have any questions on that, please ask. I do have some models for it. It's good stuff. The other thing was cost management and basic strategies for doing so. So there's more out there. If you want to search different ways to do cost management, for commodities or critical products, there's a lot of e-learning out there, a lot of articles on the topic. I'd be happy to share what I've got on the topic with you as well. In the meantime, read up on that textbook, participate in your discussion questions, and ask questions. I'd love to hear from you. Have a great